The Stanford receiver just going to go out and go nuts.
Yeah.
Locally. That's not actually happening. Speaking of going nuts, Joel Embiid did all of that and then some. Tim Legler on with us, just called it the JoJo Show, which it was. Big man had it all cooking tonight. The defensive end. Kawhi hasn't missed much this series. Embiid got that block. Then bully ball down low, getting his way to the cup. The ability to step things out. Brett Brown raving about his big man.
Where do you start with that Joel Embiid performance? Like, where does your mind go first with everything that he did out there tonight?
I mean, for me, it goes straight to the blocks. You know, we can talk about a windmill dunk. You know, you can talk about some finesse post moves and that. But I go to defense. Like, that's what interests me the most to date with this series. When we talk about whatever we're going to talk about, my mind goes straight there. He is our crown jewel defensively and I suppose offensively too, but certainly defensively. And his rim protection and blocking shot ability tonight stood out as much to me as anything in an incredible performance.
Brett, to follow up on Kyle's question, when Joel is right physically, do you feel like you have the best player in this series?
Yes.
Definitively. Thirsty. Succinct. Joel Embiid had his second playoff game with at least 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 blocks. Both have come this postseason. It's worth pointing out that the rest of the league has had a game like that once in a decade. So again, we have 3 in the last decade. Kevin Durant, by the way, in the 2017 NBA Finals had the other one. 3 in the last decade, and Embiid has 2 of them these playoffs. As the Eastern Conference semi heads to Boston, the Celtics announced today that Danny Ainge, the team's president of basketball operations, suffered a mild heart attack on Tuesday in Milwaukee. The 60-year-old Ainge also had a minor heart attack a decade ago. He's expected to return to Boston shortly and, this is most important, make a complete recovery. Understandably, this was heavy on the minds of the team.
You know, Danny's just one of those guys who, you know, he takes time out of his life, his day, whatever he's doing, his schedule, to make sure, you know, you're all right. You know, he constantly checks in on us, my family, and everything like that. So, just personally for me, you know, he's been like, you know, another mentor for me. You know, from when I first got here, Danny was this person I've seen every day and talking to. So, you know, he means a lot to my life as well. So, you know, like I said, I just hope he, you know, makes a speedy recovery.
I think that this is much bigger than basketball. So, Game 3 is Game 3. Obviously, you always want to play your best at this time of the year. Obviously, he really cares about the result. We all really care about the result. But this is a game. So, you know, that's what it is.
Kevin McHale told the Boston Herald, quote, "I'm just concerned about my buddy," close quote. He added, "I was trying to get a hold of him. I never heard back. That's strange because I always hear back from Danny either right away or in a little while," close quote. The Herald reports that's because Ainge's family took his phone from him to try to keep him from staying too connected to work as he rested. As for the action on the court in this series, the teams are separated by a point through 2 games, but that's misleading. Neither game's been close. They've both been blowouts. Closest margin in the 4th quarter thus far has been 12 points. So hopefully close games are coming. Older Celtics fans have visions of Andrew Toney when they see Chris Middleton. In the 2 years, he's averaged 21.1 points per game in 16 meetings, 35 of 55 beyond the arc. In the playoffs against the Celtics, an incredible 64%. The guy is a star. Celtics return home for the first time in more than 2 weeks. 19-3 all-time in the best-of-7 series when they get a win in Game 3 to go up 2-1. However, it's the 10th playoff series under Brad Stevens, the first time they've been tied 1-1. Brian Windhorst joins us now. You've spoken with both coaches and players on the Bucks and the Celtics in advance of their important Game 3. For the 1-seed Bucks, what's the point of emphasis and the focus in advance of this game?
Scott, I don't want to overreact here. I don't want him to have too much hyperbole, but it's the biggest game of Giannis Antetokounmpo's career. We may say that again a couple more times in this series, but it's a road game. They're behind in the series as far as I'm concerned because they lost home court advantage. If he's going to step up and be the MVP and be the MVP level player in the postseason, he's got to have a huge game. You know, his vision and his aggression in Game 2 coming out and getting all those free throws were great. He's hit some three-pointers in this series, but he has not been efficient shooting the ball. He has not shot the ball well. He averaged over 30 points against the Celtics the last 2 regular seasons. He's going to need a mid-30 to high 30s game to get the Bucks where they need to be on the road in this one. I expect an MVP-level performance.
For the Celtics, it's mission accomplished. You steal home court right out of the gates when they won Game 1. They return home. Their focus, their game plan is what?
Yeah, you know, they're confident for sure. They're expecting to win Game 3, but they didn't feel like they took advantage of mismatches. The Bucks changed their defense on them. They weren't ready for it. They kind of got outcoached in this one. Mike Budenholzer kind of outcoached Brad Stevens in Game 2 with some of the defensive switching. So they're going to take advantage when they get mismatches. They didn't do that. There's some poor defenders. Even though the Bucks are the #1 defense in the league, they got away with putting some poor defenders out there on some Celtics players. They didn't take advantage of those mismatches. Look for them to have a different game plan, specifically, Scott, for Al Horford. Look for him to attack a little bit more when he gets a smaller guy on him.
That's what's always fascinating. The longer these series goes, the adjustments to the adjustments. We'll see what happens Game 3 Friday night. Brian, appreciate the time.
Thanks, Scott.
In honor of the Raptors and the Sixers, we'll go to the archives. AI, Vince, from their prime. That sound like something you might be interested in? I thought perhaps. Remember, Coach back in the day used to say when things went your way, it was all cake and ice cream, and it certainly was for Philadelphia tonight. Paul Pierce joins me now. And, Paul, it's easy to overreact in the moment when we see a performance like this out of Joel and out of Philadelphia. What do you feel is reasonable to say about where this series sits based on what you've seen in the last 2 games?
Well, I just think there's a talent disparity between the 2 teams because when I look at the top players on Philadelphia, Embiid, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, guys like J.J. Ben Simmons, and I look at the top players on Toronto, Kawhi Leonard, Siakam, I can't find a third person on there. It has to be Lowry to step up, but he has yet to really step up for this ball club. And so in saying that, you know, Philly has the advantage talent-wise and should go on to win the series.
And beyond that, if we just keep going down the list, man, if we get to that bench, Paul, at the start of the show, I mentioned it. It was like 20% in the middle of the 4th quarter, and I just left garbage time off the equation. They're getting nothing from their bench. I mean, what do you do if you're the Raptors? Like, I mean, where do you search?
Well, I believe it has to come from Kyle Lowry because he's the all-star in this group. You know, it's fortunate that they had Siakam step up the way he did. The way he has this year, becoming a more improved player, could possibly be an all-star.
Right.
But it has to come from Kyle Lowry. He's been the face of the franchise. He's endured the most over the years. And, you know, you finally get LeBron to leave the conference. You see the door wide open. I believe that this is his time to shine. And he has to come to the table and step up as a 3rd star for them to get back in this series.
Throughout this year, Paul, we've talked about this Philadelphia team as they've added pieces. You bring in Tobias, you bring in Jimmy Butler, and there's a word that we hear a lot in basketball about being connected. As a guy who's lived this, by now they should know who does what when. When you see Philadelphia, do you see a connected group?
Absolutely. I think everybody has their established roles, and it all starts with Joel Embiid. He's the #1 option. Obviously, Jimmy Butler's a closer. You know, Tobias Harris could do a lot more. He's more talented than what his numbers show, but he's good at spacing out the floor, knocking down shots, and being opportunistic in his opportunities. And then you have shooters in J.J. and Ben Simmons just plays a floor game. They're not asking him to be a big-time scorer. You know, he's great in transition and doing the little things, and it just seems like all the pieces come together and work.
Paul, appreciate you, man. We'll talk again, all right?
All right now.
Time to do your research. Joel Embiid with his second 30-point, 10-rebound, 5-block game of the postseason. And since blocks have officially been kept track of, that was 73-74, no other Sixers players reached those minimums in a playoff game. Raptors had a standout bench this regular season. Their reserve averaged 36.2 points per game. After tonight's performance, they have 30 points in 3 games combined. That is staggering. Sixers now set up for some success in the series. Franchise 14-6 all-time and a best-of-7 when they jump out to a 2-1 lead. That's where they are headed into Game 4 Sunday on ABC. Tim Legler, home game, joins us from Philadelphia, and you had a front-row seat for the JoJo show. I'll just give you a wide berth. I mean, you tell me what about this was most eye-opening to you.
I think just the all-around physical dominance. I was thinking to myself, all the playoff performances I've seen thus far, I think this is the most all-around dominant that I've seen. I know Dame dropped a 50 and had the walk-off 3, and I know we saw some things out of KD in the playoffs so far, but in terms of all-around dominance, I haven't seen anything like Joel Embiid tonight, because he did it defensively. I think he set the tone in the beginning of the game there with his rim protection. He played the power game early, got an early one on Marc Gasol, and then you could see just can back him down, do what he wants. He was on the offensive glass, but then the finesse game. And this is what makes this guy so unique, because there really isn't any matchup for him in the league in the paint, and yet he can go out and show that kind of touch from the perimeter. He was having a lot of fun tonight, but make no mistake, this was the JoJo show. They played really well as a team, but Joel Embiid did things tonight that had this entire crowd in awe.
At the end of a game where it got away from Toronto, and it could have been whatever, it felt like it could have been 30 at some point. I mean, it's hard to kind of remember that there was a time there where it was more kind of coin flip. At what point did the game turn, Tim?
Well, to me, there was two distinct things that turned this game. In the first half, when they got some separation, I thought it was a combination of great rim protection followed by three-pointers on the other end. And you saw 3 of these instances in the first half. I mean, this is JoJo protecting the rim, and it looks like an easy 2. And there's nothing more demoralizing than when you think you've got an easy 2, and it ends up in something like this on the other end. The ball movement, JoJo trailing the play, you suck 2 into the lane because they're worried about the drive. There's Tobias Harris for a 3. Another example. Again, you're playing fast. It looks like Toronto's got something good up the floor, and you're going to take a look at this effort right here. Mike Scott, defensive rim protection, and now you go the other way. You end up with a wide open 3. Take a look at J.J. Redick, and they're pointing, trying to find where he is. Miscommunication. Danny Green doesn't run with them. Too late for Siakam. J.J. hits a 3. So that's a 10-point swing, and let's add one more to the mix. This is just an incredible open floor effort by Joel Embiid. It looks like Norman Powell turns a corner right there. There are very few 7-footers that can twist their body and rotate their hips like that and react to the ball that quickly at the rim. And now, what better way to end this tape than to have the man of the hour trail the play, look Marc Gasol dead in the grill, and hit that trail 3.
Right.
So that's 15 points that changed hands. And to me, that's where the game separated. And then the Sixers obviously pushed that thing out in the third quarter.
Yeah, and as I said earlier to Stanford Steve, man, if he's going to bury those shots, forget it, because then he can head fake and do whatever he wants, and he did. Tim, appreciate it, man. Enjoyed visiting with you always, and we'll talk again soon.